I really like Ralph Ben-Merga. I've heard him talk a couple times now at a few different events. And I think his strongest point, and I wish, like, even if he just said this yesterday and then made everyone sit there and think about it, politics is emotional. My perception on Greens, and I'm very open to being wrong, I'm wrong a lot, is we like being right. We like recognizing that climate change is the most significant issue facing us right now. And we get frustrated when that's not necessarily shared. And so we want to educate people. No, really, this is important. And we're right. But if we're not talking to people about the emotional aspect of it, and about some of the, like Mike I love this about you, Mike, the way that you talk to people in this way. That you're connecting with them on an emotional level. Not fear, not the politics of George Bush and Republican Party, depending on your views of that. But how do you talk about inspiring people to believe that we can do better? That's important. That's important, and that's politics as local. That's not just important for Mike and Elizabeth. That's important for you as a volunteer at a door. How are you talking to someone about, if we don't, we have to do something about climate change or we're all going to drown. It's 1 in 4 children have asthma. I don't want I'm going to have kids someday. I don't want them to have asthma. I hope I'm going to have kids someday. I need to go through dating, girlfriend, serious relationship, marriage, which probably means I need to get out of politics at some point. But yeah. So it's how do you make it real for someone? And one of the fundamental things in the Obama campaign is stories. So can anybody tell me anything about Barack Obama's background? Anybody? Yes.
I read his 2 books.
Sure. Where's he from?
He was born in Hawaii.
Sure.
In New York.
Right. Can anybody else pick it up from there? What else do we know about Barack? Law school and community organizer. What was that? Community organizer in Chicago. Anything else? Harvard Law School. It's a carefully orchestrated, detailed, managed story in the election. If you read the books, you got some more details, but we were trained in excruciatingly detailed how to tell Barack's story. He was a community organizer from the south side of Chicago. Got a Harvard-educated degree so that he could go into these church basements with people that had no hope, no future, and organize them to do anything. And what that gave us, it was a really important tool. It's how we connected with people. We learned how to share our own stories and share Barack's story to build the connection with someone. So, meet them where they're at. This comes back to Barack being a community organizer in the south side of Chicago. He didn't do it by holding meetings with elected officials. He didn't do it with being in newspaper or media. He went to the church basements because that's where the poor African American community was. They were in church. They were in church basements. That's where their communities were. So meet them where they're at. We go to where people are, physically, literally. So Rob Hodgson was talking yesterday to a young guy that I absolutely loved from Owen Sound. And Rob was saying, how do we connect with young people? And this guy is in high school. He's like, well, there's 10 places in Owen Sound where young people hang out. Go there. Shane's always there. I mean, it's not it's not fancy. It's go to where they are and talk to them. It's not rocket science.
I learned about the power of people getting together on one street to make a difference, and then in one community, and then in one region, and one state. And that if you motivate, engage, and empower a group of people, they are capable of tremendous amounts of change.
If I'm going to summarize, and I'm actually paraphrasing and or just blatantly stealing from Rob Brooks, because he said it to me one day when I was meeting with him in a really succinct way that I liked. In that period of time, where you're not actively campaigning, your focus isn't on supporter ID, the best thing you can do is make friends. We want you to go out and make friends with people. Join a community association, become a Rotary member. Do something that has you out in the community doing things you enjoy, making friends. So that when a campaign does come around, you can use those relationships to be like, oh, by the way, I'm involved with the Green Party of Ontario, and you make it about that relationship. Why don't you come check out, we're having a barbecue and Mike Schreiner's coming to town to talk about what it means to be a member or to be involved with the Green Party of Ontario. And you don't make it about the party or the ideas, you make it about the relationships that you have. So a lot of what we do in the between campaign periods is about making friends.
Yeah, it's about building connections with people that want to see a difference. It's about, have I gone and met Joe next door and learned a little bit about was he laid off, and what was it that did to that? Does he have a hard time with his kids' teachers in school? How is the education policy that's in place right now actually affecting him? And what would he like to see instead? What does he think might work? And then building that to a larger group that's capable of making large-scale change.
The magic happens 1 year before. So I've touched on parts of this. For those of you that aren't familiar with the U.S. primary process, there's a series of primaries that last for, oh man, it felt like it lasted for 5 years, but I suppose in reality it only lasted for 6 months. Iowa, South Carolina, and New Hampshire went first, and they spent almost a year on the ground before Election Day. So imagine having someone move to your small town in the middle of nowhere and saying, oh yeah, I'm the Green Party of Ontario field organizer for Orangeville. And they are attempting to set up an office and phone calls, and it's a year away from an election. It's, it's this fall. It'd be right now. It would have already happened. It would be crazy for us to start campaigning actively, having full-time staff actively campaigning a year before an election. But that's what happens. And they made calls, knocked on doors, went to parades, did whatever they could to get people excited or talking about Barack. A lot of house parties. In those states, it's a lot of going to people's kitchens and hoping they invite some of their neighbors over to just talk about the campaign. And then it rolled. Then it got into the exciting things that you heard about. Because Barack won Iowa, he had a lot of momentum coming out of that. And then one of the biggest internal campaign things they talked about a lot was he had a lot of momentum. A lot of people were very confident. Yes, this looks good. We are way up in the polls going into New Hampshire. And then they lost New Hampshire. So that was a big moment, and it was a stigma. If you were a campaign worker that worked in New Hampshire, your political career on that campaign more or less ended. You were still given field organizer jobs, but you weren't likely to be promoted because you worked New Hampshire. That was the reason. So it was a lesson in the discipline, the relentless, ruthless stuff I was talking about. If you lose focus on that and get caught up in, yeah, we did so well in this, bad things happen. 111 in a row through Wisconsin, for example. Got into Pennsylvania. A bunch of the bad things happened there. It affected Texas and Ohio as well. So there's a hiccup. North Carolina, we won. And at that point, as soon as North Carolina happened, the nomination was sewn up. The rest of the states were just mop up.